Hello?
One sec.
Starting.
Okay, everybody in now?
I see
I'm
people
in.
getting in.
Okay. Who typically takes control of the meeting?
Frank.
Frank, maybe? Or
Hi.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, we're getting there.
was that technical difficulty?
Apparently, I still don't see Jerry. I don't know what happened.
Oh.
John, did you let us in? Is that John Burt in the town of Groton?
Yeah, Portia had texted me, so I went in and started it.
Oh, that's it. Okay.
I hope Jerry's okay. Not like him.
Yeah.
Portia said he had trouble getting in too.
Oh.
Usually he starts them, I thought,
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
but it's going now. Hopefully he can get in now.
Do you want to give it a couple of minutes just to see if we get
Everyone else
Jerry
gets in because
Yeah.
we don't have enough for quorum anyway, so you might as well give it a minute.
There's it's Rick Costa. He's showing as an attendee.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm just kind of sitting on hot standby, saying if I sent a couple notes to Jerry. I got no response from him. I don't know if anyone has.
I texted him as well and haven't heard back.
Yeah.
I emailed him.
Very, very odd.
Yeah, if we don't have enough for a quorum, do we want to reschedule?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Because if he's not here and we don't have enough people,
right. No, there's no question.
except next week I have my monthly Fitch Booster Club meetings every second Thursday of the month. So next Thursday I would not be able to.
Right.
But I think we're getting more people now, so maybe we'll have enough. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Thanks, John, Bert, for town manager for.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you. So I do apologize if I mess something up, but we are recording, so that's great. So why don't we we'll start our meeting. It's 7:23, and so our first order of business is our roll call. It might take me 1 second just to give me 1 second. Let me write it down. Apologize for that. I was trying to write it earlier, but
Can you take a screenshot of the attendee list?
Okay, I think I'm good. So our second order would be our approval of the minutes from our last meeting. Hopefully everybody got to see that it was sent out. Anybody have any comments on that?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Bruce. Second?
Second, Bordelon.
Thank you. Our next agenda item would be our,
Frank, get to put it to a vote.
oh, I'm sorry. I
It's okay.
apologize.
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? Okay, so we're good there. Any public comment? I know that we have Rich Costa from, any comments right now, Rich?
No, I have no comments.
Thank you, sir. And I think that's all of, Lisa, go ahead. Are you good?
I'm fine.
Okay, sorry, I thought I saw a button. I got all kind of different buttons going now. I'm all out of control. Thank you very much. So on our agenda, our new business. So all of you, everyone should have gotten the copy that we talked about. So what we've been talking about for the last couple of months. We had all gotten together. So myself, Jerry, Ben, and Chad kind of got together, put the what we've been discussing the last couple of months together as a couple of options on what we think we need, and then going into kind of laying it out in a couple different scenarios of which way we could go. There's option one, option two. Jerry noted in his email in red what was different between the two. And I guess what we're here for tonight is to discuss these options and see what we want to go forward with as a task force. I think what we tried to do was just capture the things that we had talked about, starting with the needs at the high school, and then going forward with that and how it kind of trickled down to the other areas. So I know I got a lot of extra buttons here, so I apologize if I don't see hands because I can't see it all, I don't think. But I would please feel free, I guess, open up for discussion on what you guys thought about reading the options and what was out there, and any discussion that you guys want to start having. Ben, just if you would like to just start, if there was anything on there, I know that we kind of sat together and kind of came up with a plan. If you wanted to just start with what your part of it and what you saw and what you thought was, go. Oh, you muted, I think.
Okay. I'm actually trying to pull up the plans to have them in front of me, and so when I'm talking about them, essentially, option one was the best option for the schools. It covers all our needs for both fall and spring sports, and I think it prioritizes well what we need most. And option two was a little bit different. The only difference I think was one more grass field instead of synthetic. Without having it in front of me, I just can't see it.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Okay, so option two was also would also satisfy our needs, but was more contingent on the middle school field having the lights. Because I think, excuse me, sorry, I'm a little bit hoarse. I think just the the having another set of lights, another lit field would be take a lot more stress off the scheduling. So either option works for the schools. I'm happy with both, but would prefer option one. with the additional synthetic field.
Thanks, Ben. So, Chad, also you were part of that group that sat together. Any other insight that you had from the discussions that we had and kind of laid it out? We kind of worked it down to those two options. Anything that you could add for the rest of the committee?
Yeah, well, what I would say is hopefully if everybody can pull it up from their agenda, I'll try to run through it kind of quickly. Jerry had done a pretty good job of on the top of the page identifying the needs that we had all come up with. So I think that's kind of option or task number one is, what we kind of said from the very beginning was we need lights at the middle school new field. We need to upgrade the high school current complex, the track, the football field to, a newly fully appropriate synthetic rectangle that accommodates all the field sports with lights, upgraded amenities, field house and all that. We identified the need for 4 full-size rectangles, 2 of which should be at the high school and 2 for community use. But we identified the need for 3 full-size baseball fields, 1 intermediate-sized baseball field, 2 softball fields, and 2 additional tennis courts at the high school. And then as we run down through the list, I think the one thing that kind of came out in the last just couple of meetings that we've had, especially with Vin, is really what we're needing for the high school and baseball needs. Like all of a sudden, a baseball field went from a fairly low priority a year ago to much more higher priority now that we're realizing Cutler's field is gone, and now you have freshman JV and varsity baseball that aren't going to have, they only have 1 field to play on as opposed to 2 that they had previously. So that bumped the need for those, a baseball field, and then also softball was in the same category with no field on the high school whatsoever, and still the need to play at least 2 teams. That's when we were looking through option 1, if you will, the idea to renovate the stadium like we talked about, fit a high school softball field on campus, add the 2 additional tennis courts, and then 2 additional full-size rectangles, ideally with lights and synthetic. And the only difference, as been mentioned there, is we could go to a natural one if cost was a factor for option 2. So that's 3 full-size rectangles. I want to make sure everybody realizes that at the high school, it's not 2, including 1. It's renovate the 1 plus 2 new ones. And then what we kind of talked about, we'd always looked at Sutton Park as a possible baseball field area. We had done a plan 10 years ago where we could do 3 Little League fields there in place of the 2 fields that are currently there. But in talking about it, it seems to make a lot more sense with the need for an additional baseball field for the high school and an additional softball field for the high school, that we can fit those 2 fields down on Sutton Park and make them fit and have it within close proximity to the high school so that teams can be walking back and forth, whether it's through the road through the middle school or through a new pathway down, that can be determined some other point. But that was kind of our option 1, is we thought that might make a lot more sense, would be to put those fields in that location for the high school use as well as then community use outside of that. The difference there with option 2 is, as you can see, instead of doing the full-size baseball and softball, the option would be to do an intermediate-sized field and then a high school softball field and then a little league field with lights. So really we can fit those 3 smaller fields there, or if we want to but then we miss a full-size baseball field, or if we put the full-size baseball field, we got to shift them around a little bit. So then moving down to the next one, Claude Chester. Option 1, we can fit the 2 full-size rectangles, ideally with, synthetic with lights. And then because of putting the high school softball field on Sutton, we would move the intermediate-sized field to Claude Chester. So you'd have an intermediate baseball and 2 full-size rectangles at Claude Chester. And I'll just say that we did take a quick look at it from a size perspective. It can fit. We can get all 3 of those fields on there. It's pretty tight. It's going to take a lot of work to get it to happen. And I'll just say parking is something we're going to have to definitely work on. But again, I don't think that's our purview yet. I'm just letting you know that I at least looked at it and feel comfortable that we can fit them there with the space. But there's not an abundance of space to fit the rest of the amenities. The other thing then at Claude Chester for option 2 would just be to do the full full 2 rectangles. And then instead of the intermediate, that's where we could do the other full-size baseball field. Again, gets a little bit tighter because the full-size is a little bit bigger than the intermediate. But just playing with where those go in town. And that's something that maybe we talk about. Do we like the full-size baseball at Sutton in closer proximity to the high school, or do we like it further away? And then when that all kind of shakes down, then the Groton Community Center, we basically lose a Little League field at Sutton in option 1. So we'd need to add it or improve the one that's there at Groton Community Center. In option 2, because we don't lose it at Sutton, we don't have the need to replace it. Then Jerry summarized down below the deficit losses. We're still short 2 full-size baseball fields from what we have identified as a need. And we've lost an adult softball field that was currently at Sutton. And then we've lost the youth softball, which again, we've identified as not critical need at this point, but it's something to realize that we're losing. That's kind of option 1. And option 2, short 2 full-size baseball fields. And again, that adult softball field that we'd be losing from Sutton. And then he noted all the existing fields down below, like that we've talked about. The possible alternatives, those were just other sites that we talked about, as a committee over the last several months, the different properties and possibilities of what could go there, just to kind of further the discussion. But really, I think that's the best I can do to summarize Jerry's kind of lists and what we talked about. So any questions or discussion, ideas, thoughts?
So if anyone has you're going to actually have to, I can't see hands. I don't know why that is. So please feel free if you want to just to ask to speak, and then absolutely. So Bruce, I can see you, so go right ahead, please. Thank you. Oh, you're muted now.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
Thanks, Chad, for that info. Thanks, Frank. One of the things I'd like to ask Jerry for is just seeing the Excel spreadsheet that shows what we have, what we need, and then how this, I know he lists it, the deficit losses, but it would be great to see it just in a snapshot, you know what I mean? Like what each plan would do to so what we have, what we think what we need to have to be, what we think the totals of each field we should have are, and how these plans, each one affects the totals. If that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'd like to see that. And then I was wondering about, there are 6 courts, right, at the high school, and we just resurfaced them, right?
Yes,
And we
correct.
think we need 2 more, because from the high school standpoint, they're like, I guess I don't understand that one.
Vin, I'll let you take that one because that was coming from you, kind of the need for the 2 courts. And I think if I remember right, it was because of both men and women tennis playing at the same time.
Right.
Yeah, that's correct. That boys and girls are in the same season in the high school. So for both teams to be able to use the courts on the same day and have full team practices would be tricky with only the 6 courts.
Is it possible to, because I think there's 2 at Farquhar. I know there's some inside, obviously Groton, Long Point, and Mumford Cove. Just seems like there's a lot of, like, if they're going to be spending money, that I'm not sure where. Does that have a priority next to it in terms of, like, did we prioritize and give numbers or anything to the need or the importance?
I would agree with you that on the priority list, that would not be as great as a softball field or a baseball field.
Okay.
But we also were trying to keep, the teams all within the confines of the school.
Yep. So I guess when we do our final, will there be some way to express that, that
Sure.
I think we probably should, just so that the council has an idea of where we think things are on the priority level.
Right.
And the only other thing I was going to say was that the thing at the bottom, and I brought it up last meeting, was just a discussion about scheduling and centralizing that. Should be a discussion as well. That was it. Thanks.
Thank you, Bruce. Again, I can't really see hands. Councilor Bordelon, you go. Feel free. There you go.
Thank you. Yeah, no, the tennis courts, I can see that. I know one of the other big concerns, and it's always been a concern even since '98, is equal opportunity equality for all gender sports, male and female, having equal access and equal use. And so I just want to make sure these numbers are closing those gaps on gender equality and making sure that as we offer these sports, that females have the same access to fields on their facility, and have, because when it comes down to it, once, as I stated at many of the meetings, it's the academic aspect that the students miss out on when we try to put the fields off campus or have not enough on campus and we have to bus them off. Students, there's no bus to get them to these offsite locations once that bus leaves to bring them there. So also one of the things I think that, Fitch misses out on as a result of our layout currently as it stands is the fact that that camaraderie and pride in the sports sector. You're all over town, and it's students. One of the things that I heard the most was, wow, if I don't have a car, there's no bus to get me to that game to go support my teammates. So that's another big factor. So the academic and that full kind of campus feel and look sometimes is missing, but I really just want to make sure that the girls are being considered, from track and field to tennis. And so looking at the tennis courts by adding the two, I guess that my curiosity is, how is it structured? I know in the past, I remember seeing players there and they would be there for a long time because they'd have a tournament and the guys would have to go and then the girls would go because there wasn't enough courts. So I'm just curious as to how we're divvying out those tennis courts equally to guys and girls, and does that pose the problem and make that the extra two courts kind of come up a little higher when we start looking at equal accessibility factors. I also just want to make sure too, when we look at this and looking at the amenities, I know now we're looking at the fields, but again, I feel the ladies have been cut short on this end, girls. And we, it would have been nice to have a locker room down by the field when you ran track and not have to go up to the high school and have that, soccer and field hockey, and just have a place where female athletes have the same, facilities and opportunities. So those are also very important to me when we're looking at the needs. And I know that is the second phase of this, but really kind of keeping that in the back of my mind when looking at how I really see the big picture, and making sure obviously that band is also in this and that restructure of that high school, that consideration, because currently they're using a less than acceptable secondary makeshift field on the side of the building for sports and for band. And I just, I think we can do a lot better. My other concern is the field hockey in this model. Is that being addressed? I know that once again, they are playing in the outside field of the baseball, and sometimes having meets, I don't know if they call them meets, but games, tournaments, matches canceled because of the quality of the outside of the outside field, and therefore they're not able to compete. So there's a lot of things moving that I just want to make sure we're capturing in there. I'm sorry to be so long-winded, but there you go. Thank you.
No. I think we totally agree. I think that part of the plan would be that these fields would be lined such that the field part of it, let's just talk about that, would definitely be lined such that all the sports could use them, that would use that type of field. Absolutely. You put a turf field out there, you're going to line it for lacrosse, you're going to line it for field hockey, you're going to do all those things. And I think the big thing is having the two turf fields. If which is what their number one option is, would be so that we could do that, so that they're absolutely. And part of the deal was, you know, if you're going to put a new central field in there with a beautiful field house, we definitely have to, that's part of the part of what you want to do is to have that exact thing. That field house would be used. You would have a men's and women's side. You would, because the fact that it isn't there now is totally unacceptable, and everyone absolutely agrees with you. So I totally agree with what you're saying, and that's part of the turf field part of it. I think you can make that happen so much more easily than you can in the other direction. So absolutely, we totally agree with you, Counselor.
Perfect. Thank you. And
You're
thanks
welcome.
for the research and getting to this point that you guys did to brainstorm. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Go ahead, Larry. I see your hand up.
Hey,
There you
everybody.
go.
So my question is, with the assessment of like Sutton, Gloucester, et cetera, is part of the plan having amenities at those locations as well? Because it'd be great, you know, if we have all these nice fields, but then there's no amenities available for people to use restrooms or anything like that. You know, that could pose a problem. So just want to make sure we're thinking that all through. And I just also want to just piggyback on what Portia said, just making sure that when we are thinking about all this, especially at the high school, that the marching band is included with, you know, thinking things through, not just from a field perspective, but also just for like a space to be able to store things and that sort of thing too, when we as well. So just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I totally agree, and we've all talked about that. I don't, you know, I would say that part of when we present our case or we present it's not just fields. I mean, people have to understand all the amenities that go with it, right? I mean, right, we want to we put a baseball and a softball field down at Sutton Park. It's just not, you know, a couple squares and off you go. We're going to have to provide adequate resources down there for, you know, we all lived in and have been down there, and it's probably not adequate, to say the least. So and that's part of it. There's no question about it. I think that we need to push that part of it as part of our presentation. Yes, we need these two fields down there, and this is all the great reasons why, but you also have to put the amenities down there with it, or it doesn't. Yeah, it still works, but it's not what we're looking for. We need to go better than that. I totally agree, Larry. Thank you.
Frank?
Yep. Yes, sir, Rich.
I don't know if I have a video up, but this is Rich.
Yep.
We talked about synthetic fields at the two new synthetic rectangles. Remember, and please bring into the equation that we still do need a grass field adjacent to the track, so we can, for those field event areas that we do use, the javelin, the discus, and the shot area. So that still needs to be built into the equation.
Yeah, I think the thought was if you put the two synthetic fields in, you would obviously have the main field and your secondary main field, because it would still be I forget the word that Chad uses, I'll call it a professional field. Your second varsity field, I'll call it, would probably go below. And then the field that is the practice field now, that would end up being your grass field for that exact reason. It would be very difficult to run two sporting events at the same time, literally that close. And I think on the, what is the practice field now, I don't think you would have the room, as Chad laid it out. I don't think you'd have the room to put in bleachers or even small bleachers. It would end up pretty much just being a square, which would be more conducive for like a grass field for track, for practice for the football team, whatever the case may be. Absolutely, Rich. Thank you. That's
one other comment. We talked about parking. Having lived with that area for so many years, up on the baseball field, there is quite a bit of area that is adjacent to that hill there that is informally used as parking now. But I think that in the long run, that some of that area might be able to be incorporated into some parking, because It's really not used for much of anything. It's a pretty big area, not big enough for a field or anything like that. Some of it is used by the baseball team for practicing, but there is still some land there that on the fence line that could probably be incorporated for some parking.
I just wanted to agree with Coach Costa, and I call him Coach Costa. Rich Costa.
No, Coach Costa's fine.
All right, Coach Costa. Yes, that would be great too to look at is accessibility for handicap parking as well, because one of the other big pushes is making sure that we are so far from ABA compliant, and obviously knowing that when we build something new that we're thinking about all people at all levels. And I've seen people suffering to just be able to watch their children play, let it be from wheelchairs to people with that identify as having disabilities, and so having that parking closer so that families can enjoy their children and not have to go down that steep hill and about fall over just to get down to the bleachers at the baseball field. So really looking at that and thinking of incorporating parking that would be closer would be, I think, an amazing asset to that area and that whole complex as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Again, I can't really see hands very well. Does anyone else just speak up should you have any other comments? Danny, I mean, I will say this. I think the idea that I've gotten out of this task force is the need to put as many facilities as we can at the high school and take care of the fact that we need to keep our kids on campus for many reasons, camaraderie, but probably first and foremost the education part of it. The fact that you got to choose between taking an extra test and going to practice because you can't get to practice if you take the test is just the more that we can do away with that, the better off we'll be. And the fact that we could utilize Sutton Park as I'll call it for better, it's an overflow from the high school. The fact that we can, our student athletes can walk down there and get to those, I just think it just makes so much sense. It just, to everything that we're trying to do. But anyway.
I agree.
Yeah. Thanks, Danny. Did you have any other comments on what you saw? What do you think from your
No,
perspective?
I'm in agreement with Vin. I mean, anything that allows the students to walk instead of taking buses would be an asset.
Okay.
It'd be also nice to add those maybe in our final report of if you guys are in agreement, because the big thing people are going to say costs, right? And I hate putting a cost when it comes to the students and still thinking that after all these years we're still at the same where I left off there. But the cost long term of cutting down on the amount of money that we spend on busing students everywhere. So these are all, I think, key things when we're looking at, we can't, it's not just submitting a report, right? We got to sell the report. So the report's got to have stuff in there. And as I'm just throwing out a suggestion, I'll be one looking at the document, but things that people are going to want to look at are things like, we're expanding costs here, but what are we gaining, right? As a result of this long term and looking at, it might be interesting to see how much not looking during COVID times, unfortunately, but in past years when we were normally functioning, what was it costing to bus students just in our own district to and from sporting events? I would guess that it would be quite expensive. So, and having that all under one campus, yes, new facility would come at a cost, but what are some other gains that we're going to gain over the long period of time? So I just think that those are important details to add into whatever report we present. Thank you.
Did anyone else have any comments that they would like, or on what the options were and what they thought?
I don't have a comment on that, but just to echo what Councilor Bordelon just said, the cost between a synthetic and a natural grass field, you have to look long-term. You have to look at the irrigation costs, the fertilization costs, the paint, the lining of the fields, etc. And when you start comparing that to putting a synthetic field in, all of a sudden there's not that big a difference, if any.
And actually, I think when we discussed it, I think Chad talked about the fact that at Claude Chester, for instance, as we've all seen before, it floods down there, and they have the ability to kind of alleviate that by the way they build the field and the amount of fill that goes under it. So you can't, if that's a grass field down there, it's really nice, but if it's floods, you're done. Whereas putting down turf fields can alleviate that, and you can go play on them because the way they set up the field. So it's part of the discussion that we're going to, we can present our case, or we can present what we feel is the right thing. And if those types of questions come up, I think that's, those are the types of answers we have to have as a task force on why we think this is the right thing to do. And obviously with, and the number one thing is when you put that turf field in, you can put, some lights on it, and it adds, 5 hours a day that people can actually use it, which is incredibly beneficial to the town. Anyone else? I just can't see hands, so please feel free to speak up if you want to add something.
Also, having the turf fields also allows for unified sports to be able to access the field more comfortably and play different sports where a regular grass field might seem compromising to certain athletes. But having that, you can do so much more. And I just think it's going to attract a ton of different activities for our town and only make it grow. So
as a group now, I know that Ben, you didn't have it in front of you, but you all of you have seen the two options. Do you feel that we should go forward with our plan with option one, which is, as you see in front of you, as Chad went through it, and kind of go down that path, answer some of the questions that each of you had, and then kind of I'm trying to come up with a path forward, I guess.
So Frank,
go ahead, Chad.
What I would kind of jump in and say is maybe what we do is take each kind of place, park, school, whatever you want to call it, and maybe talk pro and con of option one, option two, and then do an informal poll of all of us and kind of see, because I think what would be helpful, obviously, when we make a recommendation, we need to make one recommendation, not it could be this or it could be that.
I agree.
And so if we can streamline that down today to say the group generally thinks, pick one or two. It doesn't have to be all one or all two. I think we can max back and forth. So, and I think maybe the easiest thing to do is start at the high school, right? And so the main difference between the high school, to me, we've got the renovated stadium on option one, renovated stadium, high school softball, 2 tennis courts, and the 2 full-size rectangles. In that case, both are synthetic with lights. And that's something to discuss because as Coach Costa mentioned, the area we need for some track and field, we do get it, but in option one, there were 3 synthetic fields. And then option 2, there'd be a total of 2 synthetic fields and 1 grass field. And that is the one that we noted that it would require some overflow going to the new middle school synthetic field if it had lights on it. And so I think that's probably the first thing to talk about is, do we feel as a group, would we prefer all 3 fields get synthetic turf with lights, or do we want 2 of them, the main field and a secondary field with synthetic and the third field with natural grass? Again, this all might be cost dependent later on. We might have to change our minds, but from an ideal perspective, what do we think?
Would the natural field, if we went that direction, would that have lights or no lights?
What did we say? We didn't put lights on the list, but
right. That's what I was asking.
Nothing to preclude that it could. It was more of that's truly going to be a practice field, right? Like we don't have the parking on campus to have 3 games going on 3 different fields at one time, is my opinion. So that was going to be practice field. And is the practice field grass or synthetic? Obviously, you get a ton more time on practice and a lot less wear and tear if it's synthetic. But it means that we have to find the throwing space has to get a little bit creative with where we can fit it.
Yeah, so that was my follow-up. So if we went the 3 synthetic, there would be grass area incorporated into that for the throwing events?
Yes.
Well, no, not if you went 3 synthetic, you would.
No, we'd have areas that it'd have to fit into where there would be grass in between the synthetic areas to make the throwing to be possible. It's just might not all be in one perfect alignment, I guess is how I would say it. We'll have to fit it in there. And the other thing is that the practice field it'd be a full-size practice field, most likely. We could, of course, decide that later. But you wouldn't have necessarily all the buffers all the way around it. Like a full-size soccer field needs 20 feet of safe space all the way around it so you don't fly off the field. There would be things like that we'd probably have to reduce a little bit to fit all of the track and field extra activity areas.
Getting creative with some throwing. I mean, we're talking needing hundreds of feet for javelin and discus and some buffer area because those are pretty dangerous things that are being thrown. And right now we're very lucky that we have that area segregated from pretty much everything else, where we can keep that area clear of spectators of other teams and everything like that, because it's kind of off in a corner there. So whatever grass area you do come up with, it would be a safety consideration that it would need to be able to be cordoned off from everything else going on.
Yeah,
you guys use that whole space, like that whole practice field? Does the throwing occupy? So when I say I think we can fit it, it's looking in different angles and stuff like that. But if you guys currently use it and occupy kind of the whole thing, how you lay it out,
yes,
then maybe it's more important to leave that area as a true grass field. And
we utilize the entire area.
Okay.
So at the end, it would be the west end. Is where we start with the javelin and we throw it kind of southeast, if you're thinking of it. And then the discus cage is over by towards the baseball field area, and we throw that due south. So those two areas intersect a little bit, but very little. So we're able to do all those areas. And then that's a gender thing too, because right now, when we're doing the boys discus, we're doing the girls javelin. And so the field event area can be utilized by both genders, the way we have it laid out right now.
Yeah, I just feel with the track and field and what they require, because there's no way you can lay that out and have a third synthetic field there and still then be able to do what they do. The only option.
You've seen track meets and how we.
You're right.
Obviously, Council Borderland has seen it and know how we utilize that area,
Right.
and we do use the entire area.
Right. Yeah. So I think you're almost forced to, not forced, but there's and they're thrown in the springtime, and it's not like they can run up on a Tuesday afternoon and utilize the baseball field, which they do on special events, right? I've seen them on a Saturday, they block the whole thing out and we have a big tournament or a big track meet and they use the baseball field as the throwing area. But that's not a Tuesday night regular track meet. That's not really an option. So
right, and it's especially not an option now that we have 3 baseball teams utilizing that area because those
Right.
teams
Very true.
just
I was
jump in there. So we're pretty much down on that field.
I was just going to support what he was stating and say that from what I remember it running quite smoothly. I mean, obviously it can be enhanced and resurfaced properly and some more amenities down there. On a wish list, this would be a big wish list, but I've seen not a full field house further, in an area like that, but I have seen a unisex ABA compliant bathroom and a water station hub in an area like that. So by keeping it a grass location, it might be able to facilitate that off to the side of sorts, and it can be a unisex, but it would, the field house is way over there and restrooms are always a problem at these events. But it could be, also a makeshift unisex bathroom, ABA compliant, that the baseball field can use, because most of the Fitch High School events in that area, if you go to see tennis and the building's locked, field house is locked, and they give you sometimes not even a handicap accessible porta potty.
Right.
So thinking of that area might allow, without squeezing in the throwing area, might be able to have a little satellite unisex of sort, water station / bathroom if possible.
Right.
But once again, just looking at that, and that location out there would also allow for it to strategically be used if you came down from tennis or from baseball, because there's nothing from far point to far point. So thank you.
So I guess to go forward, so we would think probably the best idea would be 2 synthetic field, obviously redo the main field, add a second synthetic field below it, and then have the third field be more of I'll call it a grass practice field, if not for a better term. So that would remain a turf field for all the reasons we said. Yep, Ben, go ahead.
Just a question for Chad. Where the current football field is and the proposed synthetic field that would be below that, would there be any space in between there for a grassy, because it would be adjacent to the track as well?
I'd have to look at it, would be my short answer. The hard part there is going to be grade again. It's such a steep hill. To make the field, is going to be an expensive field just to level it out. And so that's where doing a whole nother grading, filling operation to try to get enough for throwing might be challenging.
I get what you're saying. I'm just trying not to,
Not to lose it. Yeah.
we're talking about band as well. And band is like the worst combination for a natural grass field. So you'd want them on a synthetic surface. You'd want field hockey, soccer, and football on a synthetic surface. So that's a lot to be on 2 fields. Just a thought. And Rich, I'm not trying to deprioritize track in any way, shape, or form. I'm just trying not to lose a synthetic field.
Well, so then maybe
if there's any other area to put a grassy surface or big enough to accommodate track's needs as well.
Well, what I'm thinking is maybe the recommendation should be ideally 3 new synthetic fields, if space allows, and to keep track and field throwing to happen, right? Like if there's a way that, like you said, Vin, that in the field, in building the new field kind of partially down the hill, if there's a space, an area to get a little bit of additional space to put the throwing stuff safely in those areas, and then still get a 3rd synthetic use field, that would be the best scenario.
Yeah, I don't know how much space is down there. I don't know if you turned the opposite direction of the current football field and ran a synthetic in one parallel to a grass field, if that would be possible. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, we looked at trying to turn the fields, and it didn't pan us any good results. But it might be possible, again, because of the shape some of those throwing areas take up, that we could get some wedges in some areas to be able to get that space and get it in there. But I would agree that if obviously if you can't fit, you can't just lose all your throwing sports. So maybe what I would say is that we kind of do a blend of option 1 and option 2, where the goal is for 3 full synthetic turf fields, with the requirement that the throwing events have to have a safe space.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great way to place it.
Yeah, we find a better way to say that, but I think that's what I'm hearing, right, Vin, is that basically you need 3 turf fields to run sports on the campus, but obviously one of those sports is track and field, and we can't, lose that space.
No, track and field has to have a space, and it has to have a grassy area to accommodate the throwing. I just would hate to lose a synthetic field,
Okay.
knowing what we have going on.
How does that sound to everybody, that we kind of shoot for 3 and find a place to not lose throwing? Or do you guys want to say we only want 2 and have a 3rd grass field?
Are we thinking lights no matter if it's grass or turf down there?
I'm thinking if we do synthetic, it's 100% lights. We should never put a synthetic field in without lights. The practice area would be the one to talk about. I still think it's probably worth putting lights in because if they're there, we'll definitely use the field. The hardest part with lights and natural grass is the grass can't handle the amount of use you can put on it. So.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. I think it's kind of what I was actually asking before, but if we say whatever our recommendations are, 3 fields at the high school, whatever it is, are we going to put a number on each one to say the priority? Like the first field is if it was like 1 to 10, 10 being the highest might be a 10. The second one might be a 7. The third one might be a 3. So that when whatever our recommendations are, the council can see what we feel the priority is. Like, in other words, the first field at, the stadium field synthetic track lights might be a 10 at Fitch High School, and then at Sutton Park the full-size baseball might be a 10, but another field at those places might be like lower. I think that we should prioritize what we're asking the council to look at, so that they know if they couldn't do them all, what is the least important of what we're recommending.
Go ahead, Councilor Borland, go ahead.
Yeah. If I can take the counselor thing off for a moment and speak as a parent and a former longtime resident and former graduate of there, that I'm afraid when we start to pick it apart, we're going to lose the value. That's my fear is, and once again, this is no disrespect to anybody. It's why we're sitting here talking, right? So we're trying to be proactive when action has not been taken in the past. And so we're at the point where we have fields that are not they don't represent our economic growth and capability of our town in which we currently live when you look at the income levels here, in my opinion. This is my opinion. This is not fact search. I feel we're way behind the curve, especially in the high school fields in collaboration. And so I feel if we prioritize it and we say we'll do a field, as we've seen in this town over many years, A field might get done or B project, and then C and D get pushed off. And then when you get further away from the original project, different people get elected, different things rotate, which is all wonderful, but you lose the momentum and priority in what things were, the importance, right? So my concern is we're already behind the curveball, and I personally think that the recommendation for me, or my thoughts, and once again, it's a collaborative effort here, is a recommendation to, we're so far behind. If we put 1 new turf field in, we're going to go, yay. And we're still like 20 years, 30 years behind everybody. If we do this recommendation that's before us, that's a strong showing, and we still have some deficiencies. So that's just my opinion. Once again, I'm not trying to switch, but I'm concerned when we start to piece. I mean, we had a Sutton Park project plan that was made, I don't know when, and that still hasn't been done. So I guess the concern is, what is the priority? Do we want to enhance and better our high school athletic capabilities to be competitive around our town, or do we want to throw in a little taster here and maybe that there? And because that's what we have currently, is kind of a piecemeal, and that's my hope to get away from, and that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about it. Take the counselor out of it, take a current parent, former student, wanting to patch together the problems that have been going on for greater than 20 years and have been unfortunately neglected. And I don't want to go down the pipe of how we got there, from not having a sports fields task force internally or a committee to where we are now and keep cutting it. So that's just my thought. And that's with no disrespect to anybody. That's just passionately speaking, trying to move this ball forward. Thank you.
Right, because I think you got to remember the charter of the committee of the task force is, this is what we need. Nowhere in there does it. I don't disagree with you at all, Bruce, but I think that it's the charter is, this is what we've talked to all the folks, and this is the leaders out there, and this is what we feel we need. So we present it as a package. I mean, we need this many fields to accommodate the needs of the high school, and of the residents of the town of Groton. And these are all the reasons that it's a great idea. And once we present it, that's all we can do. And then I think it's hard to prioritize it. I mean, we all can prioritize every different thing, but I think our charter is more to tell them what we feel we need as a community. But
no, I appreciate the discussion. It's nobody seems to want to talk about the monetary side.
And I think it's just, and for the record, I think, are you there?
Yep. I think
She
we lost
froze.
you.
I think she froze.
I think we lost you, Counselor.
She's frozen.
I don't want to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Yeah,
Bruce.
I'm just saying that I think that, invariably the council and potentially the taxpayers are going to have to look at the cost, because it may have to get bonded if it's over a certain amount of money.
Sure.
And I think that we'd be remiss to think, maybe it's naive to think that you're going to hand a plan to the council at X amount of money, and our expectation is they're going to either say yes or no. And I think invariably they're going to come and say, you're at, this whole plan is 10 million, and we feel, or whatever it comes down to, we don't want to ask for that much, or they want to ask for bonding for less and need to figure out where the priorities are. And I think that it's our responsibility to prioritize them, not the council's responsibility. So even if you want to withhold that information or put it in a separate appendix to, not have it be the gist of the, what our presentation is, but I think we would be doing a disservice not to, because, in the town, I don't see, you often see people going to the political body and asking for money and getting everything they asked for.
Right.
And so, it just, I think it's just, certainly if you guys don't think it's a good idea, it's not a good idea, that's fine. But, the question's going to come up. Like, what do you think is most important? Because we're not sure that we're going to be able to give you the whole bucket. So if we don't do that, then we're leaving it up to the council or whomever to do it. And can you bring Councilor Bordelon back in?
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. So I think that
Hopefully.
yeah. Anyway, so I just think that, we have a responsibility to prioritize, to say which is most important, and let the council take the whole package, and and the RTM as well, and figure out, what the bottom line is going to be. But
Hey, Frank,
Yes.
can I just mention real quick? Someone told me that we're already maxed out on bonding until for another 10 or 15 years. So there's no way they're going to take the whole package, if that's true. So just a thought.
No, I don't think there's any question. I think at my workplace, we call that, backup slides. There's no doubt that we would be remiss if we didn't do that in the back. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
Here's what we deem necessary, but obviously, A versus B, we would have to have that. So it inevitably would come back. So what do you think if we didn't do this or did that? So I totally agree that we should do that.
Right, Frank, observing this process from the beginning, at the early stages, we did have other counselors on the task force. And I think that if they were still with us, that would be echoed, exactly what Bruce is saying. if you remember back to that period of time.
Absolutely.
So I
Yep.
think absolutely there needs to be a prioritization that is done at some point in time, probably after we agree, this group agrees on what is needed, then go back after that and look at look at it in that picture.
Yep.
So I totally agree, Bruce, that we do need to have kind of our own internal rating. I think we would shoot ourselves in the foot if we broadcast it right away, because I think those town councilors, everybody has a number in their mind, right? Like, oh, and some, whatever it is, it's always going to be lower than whatever this project's going to come in at. Because everybody's going to think, oh, 10 million, it can never cost 10 million. Then we'll get a cost tag and it'll be 20 million. And, like, oh my gosh, then how do we, so I think we set, this is the need, right? We've clearly said, here's, through 10 years of looking at this, we've been deficient in our fields across the town. Here's the need, this is what we need. And then really let them tell us, hey, we can't even come close to affording that. So you're going to need to, prioritize. I don't think we let the town council prioritize. I wholly believe that they should kind of put it back on us after we make the initial presentation and say, okay, look, if bonding is maxed out, then that's a different story too, because that might mean, all right, we really need to do the whole package, but we might have to wait for however many years until that bonding comes in. But I think if we were to present it to the council day one and say, here's what we really need. Oh, but by the way, we really we need this worse than we need that, like they'll instantly tune out to everything below priority one. And we've done all this work for nothing on some level. So I don't want to leave it up to them, but I also think we should wait and have them ask us the question to kind of, and have it based on a budget of some level, right? Because maybe there's room in there, but I don't know what it is, so.
It also, can you hear me by chance?
Yes.
Sorry,
Yep.
I'm having to come on through my phone. I apologize. Like my thing, it's probably sick of Zoom meetings. So, I agree, and I think that's what I'm saying is that, when you're putting your house on the market, and you want to get 200,000 as your bottom line, you don't put it on for 200,000. You put it up higher and negotiate down. So I think in our presentation, we go strong as the need of the town. And yes, I agree with Bruce in the sense of having our bottom lines ready. But I think, like Chad said, we do a presentation first of here's our findings, and this is how bad it really is, right? And then we look to see. It is unfortunate because we're in the midst of COVID. We have a lot of people out of jobs. So the timing of the need of having fields did not come in collaboration and the thought of like, oh gosh, we're in the midst of COVID. You know what? We need ball fields. So let's just make that clear for the record that this has been an ongoing thing that finally came to head, and then COVID has been put into this. So that's the unfortunate part, and then the bonding or whatever. But I think, who's to say that maybe down the road that the next council or maybe it'll be my children on some type of board or commission or chartering this later, that they're going to come back to these notes and say, oh, here they completed phase 1, but here's a phase 2 and 3 that still haven't been done. I hope not, but it would be nice to have this, the need and document as a need and dated as a need as of now to be able to visualize it and for future to come. And maybe it might be something that's done in phases, but also when dreaming big, one also has to keep in mind that, maybe not this year, but at some point, I know Ledyard got some help with the state reps and got some funding. This might not be a burden just going to come straight on the town. There might be some other grants and things that the Board of Ed can apply for. So when I'm looking at that number, I'm also thinking not just what the immediate burden of the taxpayer will be, but what other outside resources could come in. And so we really want to present it in a way when we're looking for help and thinking along the lines of grants, state grants and outside grants, and maybe even some of our employers in our community. I mean, if they really know the true need and we present this to Pfizer and EB and even, some of them, I know like Dominion donates to Waterford all the time for some of their sports fields and things. Maybe there's some resources here that we're missing out on. So that's my thought, but I do think Bruce has an interesting spin to it, and I can respect that. And but yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. All right, so if we go back to the synthetic, so I really like Chad's idea. You go in with 3 synthetic turf fields at the high school, with the assumption, with the caveat that you need to have the area that can be fit, that can utilize the space that is required for the track and field athletes in the throwing events. So I think I don't know if it fits. Obviously somewhere down the road someone would have to look at that, but I think that I like the way that that's presented. Does anybody against that? Totally, we don't think that's a bad idea, or do you think that's the way we could go forward? Any other comments? Good. So I think we decide that we go 3 synthetic fields at the high school, and then the mandate that so long as that can happen, the track and field park can happen, there's an area for that. Okay. And then and obviously those 3 fields, again, they all have lights, because silly not to put a synthetic field up without lights. The softball field seems like it's a no-brainer, needs to be up there for all the reasons we've talked about, with lights. And then obviously the tennis courts for all the reasons we've talked about. So I think that portion of it, we kind of have an idea on what we would present for the high school part of it. We go down to Sutton Park. We kind of had the 2 ideas. Again, we still haven't done anything with the baseball fields. The fact that we want to put a full-size baseball field down there is I think very important, with lights on it. The fact that we probably can't have another field nearby, within walking distance. The fact that you can put lights on the field down there would help you immensely be able to utilize it more often for longer periods of time. And our athletes would be able to get down there, if you would. And then again, the softball field down there, I don't know if the second softball field needs lights down there. Arguable. Anybody thoughts on that down there? I see it more, I don't know who's gonna use it other than our I don't know who's gonna use it, who would be using it at night if it wasn't our people, if it wasn't the high school students. So I don't know if you need lights on it or not. I don't know what.
I think by the time if you put lights on the baseball field, the additional cost of putting them on the softball field really isn't that much. The softball field's really quite small, so you only need a couple stanchions, so it's not normally that expensive to light. And a softball field also, because it's so small, typically can be used by quite a bit of different age groups. It fits high school, but it also can be used by youth kind of the same time. So I think as far as priority, I'd keep it in there. Okay. I think the question kind of between 1 and 2 is, do we turn Sutton Park into kind of an auxiliary high school athletic field, right? Meaning you put a full-size baseball and a high school softball down there, or do you keep it kind of youth and have it be the intermediate size baseball, the high school softball still, but then the little league field as well? And so that's kind of the gist between 1 and 2, from my opinion, is do we make Sutton kind of the backyard of the high school that can still host it, or do we try to keep it more youth based?
Personally, just my own personal opinion, I would prefer Sutton Park to be an auxiliary high school area. I think for all the reasons we've talked about, kids on campus, close enough to campus to walk to, educational part of it, have to do something after class, then I can go to practice and I don't have to figure out how to get there because it's 2 miles away. That just my opinion, strictly. Again, I can't see hands, so if anybody has a comment, feel free to speak up.
Agreed.
Are we just taking a consensus tonight? Or are we actually voting, or what was the plan?
I think I think we should get to a consensus on what we really, which one of those options we're kind of hybriding the two options, right?
Do we
but
still have
I-
enough members in to have a quorum to vote? I just want to make sure. I can't see from my phone, but I know some people drop out.
I think we have 9.
We have 9
We've still-
members.
We have
Yeah,
We have-
we have 9.
Perfect. Good.
Yeah,
I have to
absolutely.
drop out shortly, so I'm willing to hang in there for a few more minutes, but I need to get off soon to help with the vote.
Okay. So,
Just quickly on the softball lights too, you do have a lit baseball field, so that would be an equity issue as well.
oh, agreed. Okay.
I agree with that one.
Okay. So I think a consensus would be, so now again, you need to, as the flow goes down, right? So now we just have to continue our plan then we have to relocate or what we're short. But the consensus seems to be that we use it as a quote, an extension of the high school. So we would put a full baseball field and a softball field down there that are lit. So I think seems to be a consensus from the folks there tonight.
Frank,
Go ahead, Bruce.
this is Bruce Wagner. So is there a plan to put an intermediate field anywhere else? Because without the one in town, and I spoke about this a few meetings back, that Little League is launching, the junior leagues, right? So we can potentially have another option for 13, 14, 15-year-olds to play. And right now, our kids from both Groton and Mystic are going to New London and North Stonington to play. So as Little League, I'd love an intermediate field. Also with the younger AAU teams, AAU is getting it there, that we could have more teams playing there, as well as being able to host and bringing other teams from different parts of the state and New England if we had an intermediate sized field somewhere.
Now, I think in our, Chad, help me if I'm wrong, but I think in our plan, if we went through this,
We were putting it down. We were trying to
in
locate
Claude
it.
Chester, right?
Yeah, option 1 was Claude Chester to put the intermediate size field down there,
Right.
and then relocate a little
Right.
league field to the community center, so that we still try to get it in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine with anywhere in Groton that it is. I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't we'll give the space to high school and then lose the intermediate size. Also, I agree with putting lights on the softball field, just because I know EB has a pretty large, softball. What do they have? A league, pretty much, and we could use that as some sort of revenue maker.
Right. So, yeah, Bruce, in our options, we definitely have putting that intermediate field at Claude Chester, for sure. And then the Little League field being displaced at the Groton Community Center. So we've.
Okay, yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Okay.
Frank, was there any ever discovery of what was going in at the elementary schools? Wasn't one of them having a baseball field of some variety? No?
No, I think we thought so at the beginning, but I think the answer ended up being no.
No, okay.
Right. So consensus, I don't want to speak for you. I want to make sure everybody, so high school, so a softball field at Sutton, full baseball field at Sutton. Then, so that's the Sutton Park part of the equation. So because we've done that, when we get to Claude Chester, now we have 2 synthetic fields and a intermediate baseball field, which kind of follows pretty much along with option 1. Okay, so both of those would obviously be turf, synthetic. lit for maximum usage. And now that's in that area of you're using that now. That's more your community fields, right? So now you're increasing your community fields by two full fields, and you're adding the intermediate baseball field. And then what we displaced the Little League field, which we feel can go behind the Groton Community Center. So what we've missed in this at this point in time. So all that is part of option one, and now you get down to the bottom of the list, not to the bottom of the list, but what did we miss? And I think at that point, we're still short a baseball field, but I think putting lights on the field at Sutton Park will help that. And then we also have the ability possibly to use some of the Grosso Tech field if that happens. It sounds like that's could be part of it, but I think having lights on another field that we've never had before will increase the usage by 3 or 4 hours a day. So we've come up with Claude Chester. We have the Little League field at the Groton Community Center possibly. So those are kind of like the main thrust of what we were talking about with option one. Any other thoughts? Anybody that has any other opinions on those, or just
if you're
go ahead,
taking
Counselor.
if you're just taking an actual vote, or you're looking at a consensus, or either way, I'll just abstain from it for now since it's going to come to me, and then I really want to be part of this group to just be part of the discussion and advocate from a parent and a former student side, and just a longtime Groton resident, and as well as a counselor to kind of chime in. But I won't vote in this. I think if it's driven by you guys, what you want to push forward, and I pretty much stated my case, so I'll abstain and I'll have my turn to vote on it.
Since people have to leave, can we make the decision now?
Yeah, I think if we want to go down that path, I think it's a consensus from this from the group that's here tonight. Absolutely.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Is it going to come before the RTM too?
It would have to at some point. I mean, that's
Yeah. So if it's going to
sure.
come before the RTM, then there's no reason for Portia to abstain because I'm on the RTM, so it'd kind of be the same thing.
All right. Well, if that's the case, I'll
You're presenting yourself as a parent and a former
All right.
student, and I would just go ahead and vote so there'd be more strength in the group.
perfect. Then I'll do that.
Okay.
All right. So let me just kind of put a bow on it. So our consensus would be the synthetic fields at the high school, the 3. If we can fit in the throwing area or some a facility for that part of the track and field, a softball field and a baseball field lit at the Sutton Park, two synthetic square full-side fields at Claude Chester, along with an intermediate sized baseball field, and we would suggest putting the Little League field that we've displaced at the Groton Community Center. I think that's the main idea on what we're trying to do at this point in time. So we can go forward with that idea, and then so is there a consensus that seems to check all the boxes on what we need, minus maybe I think we have on here about a large I'll call it a men's softball field. And there's a couple places that we can look at. Go ahead, Danny.
Tennis court?
And the tennis courts. I apologize. Yes. True. Sorry about that. Yeah, I did not say that. So.
Hey, Frank.
Yes.
Jay Whiteloff. Sorry, I was on the phone, but was there a question about returning the baseball fields to the Cutler and West Side sites?
Right. There was a question early on whether we were kind of in the beginning of the discussions of this whole committee on what kind of fields were going in those middle schools.
Right. So I have an email. I have an email from Rick Norris, and so the Cutler site will get its full-size baseball field back, and West Side will get its smaller one. That's per Rick Norris, who's the town's representative for construction. So unless something changed after that email, that's what I have from him. So that might be something we want to look into a little bit further if somebody's overruled him.
Thank you.
I'll jump in. I don't know. I don't believe anybody's overruled anything. My guess is that whatever plans were there or what's being built. But we took into whatever the latest plans we had from Rick went into our spreadsheet as far as fields that would be available come the end of the whole school 2020 project. And we included that into what our needs assessment were. So we were counting on, just like the middle school, we were counting on that turf field already in our calculations. So it shouldn't be a new field to add, it doesn't take away from one of the fields that's still in need, I guess is my response.
Just for clarification, when we say full-size field, are we talking full size for high school play or full size for, middle school, like 14 under, or what full size is that expected to have?
Rick's email said that the fields that were removed will be replaced as they were.
Yeah, I'm just not, I'll have to go back and look because I know I had the plans, but my memory was that there wasn't enough room there for a full-size high school field. It might be a full-size youth field, but a high school field is a very, very large field. But we'll confirm. I'll go back and look through our spreadsheets and confirm that we have the right field in our database to make sure that we're counting it correctly.
But what we're proposing tonight, we're still
shouldn't change it.
Right. Exactly. I agree. So in the interest of it's 8:41. So I guess what we've laid out. I guess I'm asking the people on the call tonight if there's a consensus that that's the way that we want to present our findings as we see them today. Any comments? Anyone think that we've gone down a wrong path? That there's something that we're missing? Please let me know what you think. If not, we'll consider it a consensus of the panel and of the committee that's here tonight, and we'll write this down and go forward with that recommendation, and we'll tweak the whatever I missed, and so Jerry yells at me. But I think that what he laid out was terrific, and I think we've kind of tweaked it a little bit, and I think it's good, and we can go with that. Anybody, any other comments for that? No, everybody's good. That's great.
Yes, I'm good.
I think. Awesome.
I agree.
Perfect. So I think, our next meeting should be on, sorry, I don't have my notepad in front of me. I can't get to my clock. So I think our regular scheduled meeting would be the 15th, right, in 2 weeks. So we'll have all this kind of written up. I'll have Jerry, we'll send out an agenda on kind of what we discussed tonight. And I don't really think we can go into what we want to do next because we just don't have time tonight. But I think our next meeting, our number one agenda was how do we now start presenting this? Whether most of you are much more engaged in the political scene than I am, on who we need to talk to and how we want to present this going forward so that everybody understands what we're trying to do and present it to the folks in the community the best way we can. So I think our agenda item on the 15th. So on the 15th at 7 will be our next meeting. We'll kind of have a go forward plan from there. Everybody okay with that? Does that sound like a path forward, if you would?
I think that sounds great. And is there any possibility to have any more information regarding if we have to squeeze in the throwing areas for the outfields for track, or could we have a better like conclusion on that, or is that going to take more time?
I'll try to come up with an answer for you.
And then maybe some information on the what fields will actually be at the new elementary schools, former middle schools update at that point too. That way we're just as clear as we can be.
Yep, and I know Jerry had him on one of his agendas, back. So I know we have him in there, but yes, I agree. We can finalize that, and I can
Okay.
do my best to have some sort of an idea of what fits and if we can get that third field in reasonably.
Thank
And
you.
if you need some you need some dimensions or anything on the field event areas, feel free to email me and I can provide that for you.
Perfect.
All right, terrific.
I just one other
So-
question. Quick, just
Go ahead,
real quick.
Bruce.
Chad, is it possible to get that, like the spreadsheet with the numbers added with, I think we've had it before with what we had, what the needs were. Can we then have it updated with what we're proposing to add to, so we can see the final,
Yep.
like what the needs are and what we're bringing it up to or whatever. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, we could plug
what
in.
we were and what it would. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we could plug in the fields if we were to build everything we're asking for.
Yeah.
Let it run through it and spit it out, and hopefully it shows that we've met the need. But yeah, I can update that.
Okay,
spreadsheet.
thank you.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. Good. Okay, any other comment? Are we good?
Move to adjourn. Is that all right?
Yeah, absolutely. Bruce, move to adjourn. Like it? Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Danny. Second. Okay, next meeting, 15th at 7. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
I appreciate it.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.